countdown to the last comic shop in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Hey, it is now time for more of the last comic shop.
What's up, dorks?
Wow. Hey, how you doing, Mikey?
It's Mikey Wood.
Yeah. I'm the most Andy Larson, and that's J.A. Scott, and that's Chad Smith, and Mikey Wood just came to the... Are you here to read a book this week, Mikey?
Heck no, comics is for kids. I'm here to play in the snow.
That's right, it snowed. He's here to play some hawks.
Hey, we don't play with toys. That's some other podcast, maybe. It's not our podcast. We're supposed to read comics. We don't have a show for this week now. Wait,
did you bring Forlom, or is that Suckus?
It depends. Bum, bum, bum.
We can't do this the whole show. We just can't talk about Star Wars figures.
J.A., put those snow speeders down.
Got an AT-AT and it's warming up outside. Can we hurry this up?
That Wampa's getting rank.
Stop stroking that tauntaun.
What do we hold on, it's fine. You guys can go play, but we got to give something to the audience. They tuned in for this week's show. Like, what are we going to do?
We've got interviews. Let's do that.
Oh, yes, snap. We do have interviews. Tons of them from Baltimore Comic Con that we never got to. So let's go down to the archives while J.A. and Mikey go outside.
Have fun. Wear your mittens.
I mean, you didn't want to go outside and play action figures with them, right? I mean, they're playing Star Wars. I didn't think that was your bag.
Yeah, the Star Wars guys don't bend at the elbows, and that makes me real bitter. I've been a G.I. Joe guy for life.
Do you want to take Snow Job out there and show them what's what?
Let me find my Arctic Fox.
Okay. Well, while you look for your Arctic Fox, we're going to get to some of those interviews that you and I cut at Baltimore Comic Con just a couple months ago. So we're going to go ahead and start off with a great conversation that I had with Phillip Kennedy Johnson, who was one of the major reasons why I started reading Superman again. All right, we're here at Baltimore Comic Con with Phillip Kennedy Johnson. Thank you so much for taking a couple moments today out of your busy schedule to talk with us at the Last Comic Shop. We love your run on Action Comics with Superman. I know I've talked about it on the Last Comic Shop before. It's the first time I've really bought Superman issue by issue by issue in about 20 years because I am loving this War World saga.
Thanks, brother.
So I wanted an opportunity to sit down with you and ask you a couple questions about your comic book background for all of our fans. First and foremost, I'm guessing you were a comic book fan growing up.
I was, for sure, yeah. I learned how to read off of comics.
Okay.
Yeah, my dad would come home with boxes of ripped up stuff from, like, garage sales or wherever he could get them for a couple of bucks, and just let me read them. I mean, for him, it was like a tool for me to learn to read.
Right.
He didn't hold the medium in any kind of high regard or anything. To him, it was like basically junk, but that's how he had learned to read when he was a kid. But unlike him, I just really was fascinated with it, and I made my own comics even as a kid. Just like I would emulate what I saw on the page, and it was super fun. I think he was kind of discouraged that I stuck with it as long as I did. But I just never fell out of love with him. I mean, there did come a time when I ended up kind of choosing music as a career, and for a long time I kind of fell out of comics just from bandwidth. I didn't have time to read for fun really around like college time and for a few years after that. But right up until then I was reading comics the entire time, and then when I had an excuse to get back into it, it was really awesome to get back.
Oh yeah. Well, I guess that's the next question is, do you remember any of those particular issues that your dad brought home, or maybe one from a comic book shop that you would say, like, this was my first real comic, or this is the first comic I really remember, and I'm like, yeah.
I don't have a single issue that I remember being the first. I remember some as being really impactful. There were several Superman family books, like the big 80-page giants.
Oh yeah?
There was some Batman family stuff too, like a Batgirl Nightwing team. Or sorry, I guess it would have been Batgirl Robin team up. When it was still Dick Grayson, but he was like getting kind of old and jacked.
Yeah.
But he was still wearing like the plate mail briefs and all that.
Right.
They were teamed up against Benedict Arnold, I believe.
Yes.
Remember that one?
I just posted that on our Twitter page not too long ago.
Oh, really?
It's this crazy cover with Benedict Arnold.
Like in the sword fight, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And but it's got a great cover with Batgirl on the bike and she's driving and
yes, exactly.
And Dick Grayson is jumping 20 feet in the air.
Yeah, right. Totally. Yeah, it was a cool issue. I mean, I remember that one being really fun. And at some point, he brought home a copy of Superman 400.
All right.
That one was hugely impactful. I remember that was an anthology story with. I mean, these names didn't mean shit to me at the time.
Right.
There was a Will Eisner pinup and a Jack Kirby pinup, and Frank Miller drew an entire story.
Right.
Duranko did a whole story, I believe. Just a who's who of comics were in that issue. At the time, the names meant nothing to me, but I was just so blown away by the creativity of every story and how unlike the usual story of the month kind of thing that I had come to think of comics. It was more like the theme of the whole thing was the Superman in the future. That was the whole thing. Some of them showed Superman himself in the future. Others just showed his impact. So it showed how the world had evolved thanks to his presence. And man, it was just such an incredible book. And that was really what stretched my imagination for what comics could do. That book was hugely impactful.
You mentioned that up until college you were also reading comics. Last question about that is, what was your first series that you went specifically to comic book shops? You had to kind of pick up every month.
Dude, I grew up in the country and I had never seen a comic store until post-college. All the comics that I owned either came from somebody's piles of junk in the garage, or sometimes when I was really getting a treat, I could get some comics from the spinner rack in a drugstore or a grocery store. Okay. By the end, when I was in high school, middle school, high school, that was when the Batman Nightfall stuff was coming out. And I, this is all. I didn't know about the turnover nature of comics, where it's this big illusion of change thing that constantly happens. Where, when Batman got his back broke and John Paul Valley was Batman, I didn't know that was all going to get turned around necessarily. I was dang, what? It was such a big deal to see these crazy big moves happening. Oh my God, Batman lost and he's out of the picture. Now there's a new guy. It seemed like I was seeing something really that mattered. So I was picking up Nightfall all the time. Okay. Because most of the comics I had before that as a kid were, again, Adventure of the Month kind of things, where World's Finest would have an adventure, or Spider-Man team-ups, where it was him and Ghost Rider that would team up to take down some random villain, and then it'll be over, and the next month there'll be a new one. I had a big stack of cartoony books too, Carl Barks type stuff. Some of them were the forerunners to DuckTales, Scrooge McDuck books, or some of those did actually go. Sometimes in those books would have stories that would go month to month to month to month. Yes. The Barks universe is kind of all of But typically they were kind of one and done. So when they were doing this Nightfall thing, it was this big saga that was unfolding in real time in front of me, and it really made a big impression. And also in the X-Men universe, this is when the cartoon was a big deal. Yes, and if you weren't reading X-Men, you're just not a good person. You just had to read X-Men, or you're what are you even doing? Right. So it's in the Joe Mad days. So I was reading Jim Lee X-Men and Joe Mad X-Men, and we were reading the Fatal Attraction stuff. Yep. And let me think. Executioner Saga. And I don't remember that one at the time. I remember the Phalanx Saga. Yeah, that too. And then Age of Apocalypse and all that. That was just these huge, crazy adventures that turned out so well. Well, speaking of that, let's kind of pivot to how you went from being a comic book fan to a comic book writer. So how did you do it? What was your story of getting involved in the industry? Honestly, I was pretty well out of comics when this all kind of started happening. I got a younger brother. He's 10 years younger. And when I was growing up, I was way into music and also into art. Okay. My younger brother also played music and did art, and he ended up going the other way. He wanted to break into comics, had no idea how. Both of us were just country mice in darkest Kentucky in the middle of nowhere, and no internet, no stores, didn't know anything. Right. I was already in a professional band in the Washington, D.C. area, and he reached out to me. He was like, dude, I have no idea what to do. He was going to college and doing okay, but not setting the world on fire and not really digging it. Right. He just wanted to do comics. I had no idea how, and he seemed kind of lost, and he was really bummed out. I was like, dude, just move in with me, and we'll figure it out. We'll somebody makes these things. Let's find out how it's done. We'll just kind of educate ourselves. So we literally bought the How to Make Comics for Dummies book.
Okay.
And other, better books. Like there's a great book by Andy Schmidt, Guide to Making Comics and Graphic Novels, or something similar to that.
Okay.
And this Scott McCloud, and like these great books that were incredibly useful, and also just finding trades that had the scripts in the back, and like the process pictures of the layouts and everything, just kind of putting the whole picture together, how these things are made. And I wrote some short stories for him to illustrate, and we just kind of would troll Artist Alley, talk to anyone who would talk to us, and just kind of figured it out together.
Well, eventually it led you to DC. Eventually it led you to the Superman book that I talked about. I know that you've done some other work, but simply put, I do want to talk about that because it's one of the biggest, it is the biggest character in the entire comic book universe. And here you are writing for Action Comics. That's incredible.
Thanks, man.
And not only that, but writing a fantastic story that had roots in the Future State, kind of first started spinning out of that. Now, I did have some questions about Future State. Was kind of originally started as a 5G. It was a Dan Didio thing about, again, moving characters into the future and things like that. And then Dan Didio left DC. Did you have to reshuffle the cards a lot for Future State after that, or was pretty much the story set with the whole notion?
So before the 5G thing started to really take shape, I was doing a story called The Last God at DC Black Label.
Right. This
is big epic fantasy horror series, and that book is just all world building. There's so much world building went into that series. That's one of the key reasons I love comics so much. Just the world building is so rewarding to me.
Yeah.
And I just went all in on that book. Writing that book is like writing 3 books at once. There's just so much to do to make it as good as we wanted to make it.
Yeah.
With something like high fantasy, people like Tolkien and George R.R. Martin, as far as the world building, those guys kind of set the bar for how much work it takes to really make the world seem real.
Yes.
And I did not want to do the small ball version of that thing. So I, again, did the languages and the original songs and the histories and everything that you do to make a legit epic fantasy world. So while they're putting 5G together, I got the impression the editors were kind of seeing Last God like, damn, this guy puts way too much work into this. And like, he's like, this is a guy who really likes to world build. So they approached me about kind of being the quote unquote showrunner for the cosmic arm of what 5G was going to be. There was going to be like a little family of cosmic books,
right,
as part of 5G, and they're like, we want you to kind of steer the direction for this thing and do what you did on Last God, but for this other thing. Before all this was happening, I was pitching like Red Hood.
Okay.
Like I really like ground level heroes, and it did not occur to me that I would get a shot like Action Comics or this cosmic thing that they're talking about doing. I was trying to, I was doing like a heist story.
You wanted to do the opposite, go in the opposite direction.
Yeah, well, I just didn't. I would have happily done this other thing. It didn't occur to me that they would let me for the stage I was at.
Right.
So when they approached me, I just totally jumped at it. I just kind of found myself like, damn, am I a cosmic guy now? I guess I am. I really like this.
Yeah, you're kind of like Jim Starlin a little bit nowadays. Like, you seriously are. You build like this universe, and like you populate it with, again, to your point, if you read what's going on in Action Comics, if you've been reading it, boy, you spend a lot of time in that civilization.
No, thank you.
And it seems like it's millennia long, like that there's been things that have been going on that planet for a long time. But yeah. Awesome,
man. I'm glad to hear that. It's important, I want it to feel real. I want people to see a real place.
So then it went from 5G to Future State, and then...
Yeah, they ended up like pivoting from 5G, because it was going to be this permanent thing. Like, right. 5G was going to be the new future of the DC line. And at least that was how it was expressed. Even then I was dubious. I was like, really? We're really never going to go back? And they're like, that's what they're saying. So that was kind of what I expected. When things kind of pivoted, they still had, not just with the cosmic stuff, but they had all these amazing stories by tons of other people that they were very excited about doing.
Right.
And some of them they still wanted to do them, but they wanted to get there more organically and not just blow up the whole line and do it all at once. They still wanted to get to a lot of those stories. There are certain key ones that they thought would be really good to carry things forward. And one of them was the thing I was doing with Warworld. And they were like, what if we made this just a straight up Superman story? He was already going to have a big role in it, but we were just like, let's just make it a Superman thing. What would you do then? And so I kind of reshaped the idea, made it more Superman centric, and what we ended up with was, became the Warworld saga.
Yeah. And it is wonderful. I mean, for folks that are long-term comic book fans, we all know that, like, Superman's been to Warworld before. There's kind of some similar story. I remember a story a long time ago where him and what is it, Wonder Woman go there for like 400 years or something like that, and they end up fighting on World, and it's like the whole time Superman's like, no, I'm not going to hang out with Wonder Woman, and you're just like, no, that wouldn't be believable at all. Now, with the Authority and bringing them into the story, did you want to use them, or was that something that you were like, well, can you work them in there, or? That was an opportunity to work with Grant Morrison in a way, because Grant had this story that they wanted to do, and it was already, I don't know, that was one they still wanted to do pretty much as it was perceived before. Right. And they found a way to kind of like, what if we found a way to tie it into World Saga? And so we just, Grant and I spoke back and forth a good bit, and worked with the editors as well, figured out how to tie it all together. And originally I was conceiving of World Saga as being just Superman up there. Right. But it didn't make sense for Superman to form the Authority team and then not bring him. Right. Like if he was putting together a team to kind of protect Earth in his absence, then what's John doing? Like, that was kind of John's role. Yeah. And to leave the Authority on Earth to do the same thing suggests a lack of faith in John. It seemed redundant. So it made more sense to me that, like, what if we set it up so that the Justice League couldn't go with him, or or didn't want to, or whatever. And so instead we kind of created this rift between Superman and the Justice League, so that he needs another team. It kind of made sense that his powers would be kind of taking a hit, in part because of the nature of Grant's Authority story, and also because if he's going to be, getting dragged through the mud on Warworld, it doesn't make sense if he's as powerful as he normally is. When everything was taken into account together, right, it made by far the most sense for Superman to take his team with him. Oh, absolutely. And it allowed for a lot of classic Superman kind of tropes to come out in your writing. Like, again, it's kind of funny that everybody thinks like Midnighter, that's just kind of like a Batman stand-in, and even you have some lines in the book about like, yeah, everybody thinks I'm Batman or whatever, but like it allowed you to kind of play with the Superman-Batman dynamic without using Batman. Yeah. Like, it's kind of like you still got a little bit of the feel, but you also got to put your own spin on it, because it wasn't Batman. It was a little bit of different character, so he would even do some things that were even more extreme than Batman might do. Again, I keep on going back to my favorite line in the entire book. Midnighter comes up, he finds out that these black suns are underneath, he knows how to basically get them out of there. He's like, we just got to blow up these black suns, and you get your powers back, boom, you're done. Or these red suns, the red sun generators, and we just have to blow those up. And Superman's like, well, you're going to blow up War World then. And he's like, well, we came with you. Why are these people more important than we are? And he says, they're not more important, but they're not less. And I think, again, that was the moment I decided, like, I'm going to read your book forever. Because, like, that was the essence of Superman. It was a very quiet moment. Superman doesn't grandstand, honestly. It's what he really, truly believes. And in those quiet moments when he says things like that, yeah, that's the essence of Superman. Even when nobody's listening, he's like, everybody's important, and I'm trying to save everybody here. Like, what's the best for everybody? And so, yeah, man, I really, really loved your Superman stuff. I know I'm taking up a lot of your time, so real quickly, do you have any projects around the corner that you might want to talk about? Stuff that I can talk about, I'm not sure. So action is continuing. We're about to do the next arc, and it's going to focus on one of my favorite ever Superman villains, Metallo. Oh, yeah. I cannot wait for people to see what's coming for that. It's a whole new era of Superman comics that's coming up that's very much inspired by the Triangle era, the way those books were all companion pieces all the way through the run. Oh, yeah. It's like Metropolis is going to be so big and bright and exciting. We have so much stuff planned for like kind of reshaping that city as the actual city of tomorrow finally. Yep. I can't wait for people to see what we're doing with all that, with this whole super family is a big part of it. There's 007 at Dynamite. Oh, yes. Which is ongoing. We're really excited about that story. That's going to be, I signed on initially for 6 issues, and now we bumped it up to a longer arc because we have. Very cool. I came up with an idea for the end of the arc. I was like, actually, what if this happened? And it kind of became this whole bigger story. So nice. Super stoked about that. I'm doing another arc of Alien right now called Alien Icarus. Okay. Which is already on shelves. And I'm doing a Create Your Own. It's coming out next year that I can't talk about yet. It's all very early, but oh, that's all right, dude. It's my first like legit Create Your Own I've done in a little bit for like the last year or so. A story that I feel like is important, at least to me. That a thing that kind of took shape during COVID, kind of about COVID in a way. Right.
And I can't wait for people to read it.
Oh, absolutely. Well, maybe we'll have to have you back on the Last Comic Shop once that launches, and you can talk about your project then. Thank you so much for taking some time here on the Last Comic Shop to talk with us, and we hope you have a great rest of your show.
Thanks, man. It's great to meet you.
You come in for some cocoa. It's over there, right?
My giblets. Got frosty giblets.
I could put something in it if you want. I got marshmallows. I got whipped cream over there.
Make it a double. Mikey's coming back in too, I think. I don't see J.A. I don't know where J.A. is.
The Wampa must have got him. In any case, we'll be right back after these commercial breaks with more Last Comic Shop greatness here on our snow day.
What if you could live with your favorite fictional characters and have a place to connect with the best nerdy neighbors and creators out there? Join us on your friendly neighborhood comic show. Every week, we keep hope, give help, and share comics with all. With games, interviews, and more, this isn't your average talk show. It's a living neighborhood. We are honored to be your CBC Comic Book Community Award-nominated nerdy neighborhood. So what are you waiting for? Come join the fun and join the neighborhood. It's your friendly neighborhood comic show every Sunday at 1 p.m. Eastern on YouTube.
Hi, I'm Kevin DeCristofano.
And I'm Sean Flanagan.
And we are the Ninja Turtle Nerds, your weekly podcast covering the Ninja Turtle comic book series one issue at a time. Plus the video games, the cartoon show, the VHS tapes. If it's Ninja Turtles, we'll cover it. Ninja Turtle Nerds is available wherever you get your podcast.
All right, we're back with more of the Last Comic Shop, and it is now time for more Baltimore Comic Con interviews on this apparent Hoth Day here at the Last Comic Shop. And Mikey, man, you look frozen to the bone, buddy.
Yeah, I don't know where J.A. went, but I'm pretty sure his Tauntaun's going to freeze before he reaches the first marker. Yeah.
All right, well, since you're in here, and I've got the Archive Rama 3000 fired up here, what interview did you want to hear from Baltimore Comic Con?
You know what would be awesome? It would be awesome if you had an interview with Mark Schultz, because Mark Schultz's work on Cadillacs and Dinosaurs is magnificent.
Ah, well, we actually do have an interview with
God.
Yeah, I know. It's like you almost should have came to that show, or I don't know, posted on Twitter about how you should have been at that show.
Yeah, I don't have any other hints I could have dropped or anything like that. But
we had room in the trunk.
Yeah, exactly. You could have just smuggled you in a suitcase. Any case, yeah, we've got that interview with Mark Schultz coming up right now.
Hey, we're here at Baltimore Comic Con, and it is Andy Larson talking with Mark Schultz. And talk about getting to meet your heroes. Like, seriously, Mark, I've been meaning and wanting to talk with you for a really long time, because Xenozoic Tales was one of those books that I first got out of Kitchen Sink Press, his back catalog, when I was coming up as a teenager. And it was one of those books, you and Mike Aldred, I was like, now I am a man, because I am buying things from Kitchen Sink Press, and I fell in love with your artwork. And from there, I discovered other folks like Al Williamson, because I thought his stuff looked, I was just like, wow, I wonder where Mark. But I want to ask you, so were you a comic book reader growing up, or a comic strip reader, or anything like that?
Yeah, absolutely. I discovered comics when I was 5-6 years old, seeing them on newsstands, and the ones that caught my attention, not surprisingly, had dinosaurs on the covers. The War of the Time Forgot books, the Turok Son of Stone books. Tarzan. And, that developed into appreciation for the, DC comics, and then Marvel comics, and on. And when I got to college in the mid-'70s, I went to art school, and I kind of gravitated away from comics, became more of a painter. But after I graduated, and several years after that, I, slowly realized that what I really wanted to do was tell stories.
Right.
And the perfect media for that was comics.
Okay.
So
I was going to ask, you were part of the black and white boom.
Right.
And what was that like at that point in time to be one of the big players who your work was eventually translated into cartoons? And what was it like to reach that level of success?
I came along at a very fortuitous time. The black and white boom gave me, the venue and the readership to really establish myself. So I was very lucky. Kitchen Sink was expanding its line to take advantage of that. And but at the time, I mean, I gotta say, I was just struggling to get the book out. So I'm not thinking in terms of, wow, what a great success this is. I'm just thinking, how the hell am I going to get this out? Because I'm slow as the dickens. No big surprise, but originally the idea was Dennis Kitchen wanted me to get out the book bi-monthly.
Okay.
And it turned out that first year I managed to scrape out 4 issues, and it just about killed me. To his credit, Dennis and Kitchen Sink said, get it out when you can.
Okay.
Genius takes time, and your level of craft.
Right. The level of detail in some of your pictures.
Well, my level of obsession with details that no one else is going to notice, whatever that has throughout my career been both a benefit, I think, for doing finished work, but also kind of a curse in that a lot of the things that I think I probably worry about, no one else is noticing. But that's just my temperament, and it's worked out for me, so I can't really complain.
Well, I do want to talk about Xenozoic Tales, and as some folks might know it, Cadillacs and Dinosaurs. Again, that's like, it's such a wonderful, it just rolls off the tongue, Cadillacs. But how did you come up with the idea? Did you always want to do like a post-apocalyptic story with the dinosaurs and everything? Or were there influences from other particular series that you liked growing up that you were like, oh, that's a neat idea, let's throw those into the stew and see how it tastes?
Yeah, all those things, Andy. After graduating college, I was getting work doing illustrations for advertising.
Okay.
And books, how to do books, like how to redo your kitchen, or how to plant a garden, things like that, But I'm thinking in my head, what would I really like to do if I was able to do whatever I wanted? At the same time, this is the early 80s, the whole independent boom was starting to happen, and comic book stores were starting to become a thing. And one came to my area, and I went there, and all of a sudden, bam, I see Love and Rockets. I see The Rocketeer. I see American Flag. I see Kitchen Sink's line, reprinting The Spirit. And it was, oh my God, all these things that suddenly interest me beyond just Main Street comics were available and seemed, oh, this is obtainable. I can see myself making a career at this. So I'm thinking, while I'm doing my advertising gigs, I'm thinking, well, what if I had my own comic, what would it be? What would I want to do? And I'm thinking in terms of growing up, the adventure films I grew up with in the 60s that were on TV, King Kong, the Tarzan series. And I was a huge fan since my teenage years of adventure writers like Edgar Rice Burroughs and Robert E. Howard, and science fiction, Dune by Frank Herbert. And mix that then when I was really seeing for the first time, again in the early 80s at this comic book shop, the actual EC comics from the 50s that were available in the store.
Yeah,
and getting my hands on some of those, it was like almost alchemical. That was the ingredient that really got me excited. I want to try to get the vibe that I got from those, combined with movies, combined with the books I loved, but all these elements came together.
It's amazing that you say that about the EC Comics, because a lot of your stuff reminds me of that era because of like things like your attention to detail and how Harvey Kurtzman with Two-Fisted Tales wanted like, no, that's not the type of ammo that would go in a gun like that, or like you have to get the tank just right. And so like that level of detail is in Xenozoic Tales, in my opinion. And so it's just like you almost came out of that same class of those folks.
I knew when I decided I wanted to do comics, it's like, well, I don't know how to tell stories in comics. I got to study this. I'd never had a class in sequential art. I loved comics, but I never really paid attention to the foundational principles of how you visually and with visuals and with text, you tell a story in an engaging manner that keeps people interested. So I started reading Will Eisner, the Spirit stories, because those were short, concise stories.
Right.
And Harvey Kurtzman's, the EC stuff, the war stories primarily, which are just great 6, 7, 8 page textbook stories in how to use sequential art to tell a story.
Yes.
And so those were my guidelines. And as far as the art goes, I absolutely adored, still do, Wally Wood.
Yes, yeah.
And starting out, I didn't have a style of my own.
Right.
Again, I had been a painter. I was doing like technical illustrations. I didn't have a style for comics. And starting out, I wanted to be Wally Wood. I wanted to duplicate the vibe, the feeling I got from his very atmospheric panels. And
right.
The art of Wally Wood.
The art of Wally Wood.
The personal stuff, probably not.
The personal stuff, yeah, from what I'd read, yeah. Not so much. But, every issue it evolved a little bit further into eventually, I hope, become my own thing. But yeah, those were the things that kind of came together in the beginning.
Right. Well, of that era, I've said it on the podcast before, I feel like you, Dave Stevens, Steve Rude, you guys are on my Mount Rushmore of that particular era of comic book artists as some of the best. And I can't say enough about Xenozoic Tales, but I wanted to ask you, what was your proudest work? Like, do you have a particular issue or a particular work that you say, you know what? When I stepped back from the drawing table on that one, I was like, yes, that means a lot to me.
That is yet to happen.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I mean, I think you talk to most any art, it's always, I still see the things I wish I'd done differently. But the last couple issues of Xenozoic, really, I think I both understood how to tell the story in an engaging fashion. It worked better for me. I think I had a better handle on the characters, how to write the characters, and I had a more proficiency with the artwork. So,
absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for taking some time to talk with us today. What have you got coming out? Anything recently?
A few years ago, I came out with a heavily illustrated novella called Storms at Sea, which, mining the same type of fantasy science fiction territory. And I'm working on a sequel to that. It'll be a novel-length story, again, heavily illustrated.
Okay.
And I'm hoping that I'll be able to get a Xenozoic story, a new one out at some point. So.
Oh, I would love that. And I think the time is ripe because there's some folks like me that remember Xenozoic Tales so fondly, and we would love to see more of that.
I'll say I've got the most patient fans in the world. I appreciate it.
We will continue to be patient for more wonderful work from you, sir. So where can they find your stuff? Do you have a website or?
I have a Facebook page.
Okay.
I'm so old school. That's my social media so far. It's called Mark Schultz's Xenozoic Tales and Other Stories. And if you put in Mark Schultz Xenozoic Tales, I'm sure it'll pop up in Google. And you can go to the Flesk Publications website.
Okay.
And their social media sites, which my publisher is Flesk Publications.
Yes.
And not only can you find the latest information there on what's being published of my work, but you can also, there's a gallery of my original art for sale.
Very nice. That's what I was hoping that you'd say, because again, if you have a chance to get some of that, wow, that's good stuff. So thank you so much, sir. Appreciate your time today. Really great meeting you, and I hope the best for you in the future. I hope your best work is still ahead of you, because
I hope so.
Because if that's what we've seen thus far, I can only imagine what we'll see going forward.
That's right. We're waiting for it very patiently.
Oh, thanks guys. I appreciate it.
All right, we're here at Baltimore Comic Con with Adam Walenta. Adam, how's the show doing?
The show is going great. Yeah, we're having a great time. We're here with Punk Taco 2, this is only the second convention it's ever been at. It's brand new, and we're excited to have it here.
I was going to say, the first Punk Taco, tremendous success. You won the Ringo Award. What was that like to see your work in print and to do so well?
Oh, it's fantastic. We worked so hard on it. It took a long time. My son was 5 when we first started the project together, and it came out in 2018 originally, and then by 2019 we had gotten nominated for the Ringo Award, and that was incredible because we're just an independent small press comic, and we do it all ourselves, and to be nominated alongside all these amazing publishers and artists and creators, it was just a huge honor. And then to actually win, we did not expect that. That was it was amazing. So now we're back. We got volume 2, and maybe next year we'll get nominated again. Who knows? That'd be awesome. But if not, we're just happy to have the book out and get it to the people.
I was going to say, and we appreciate your hustle. We see you out there on Twitter all the time trying to promote, trying to get people interested into comics, trying to get kids excited about comics. Yeah. What could kids look for in Punk Taco 2? What are you bringing to the table this time?
Oh, it's almost double the size of the first one. Same great price, though. And it's got a lot of new characters. It's a much bigger adventure. Punk Taco and the band are basically on a planet where they are like the size of ants compared to the villain. So Punk Taco has to use his amazing, voice and the power of music to try to reach this giant alien who's destroying the planet. The alien's so big it doesn't even recognize them as sentient beings. So he's always up against impossible odds, but we're going to see how Punk Taco prevails and help save the day.
Well, as my co-host Chad mentioned, Last Comic Shop is all about getting folks to read comics, especially kids, and just the story about Punk Taco, working on it with your son. Again, it warms my heart because, as a father myself, I know that my son loves comic books. And tell me how this whole project of Punk Taco came about, like working with your son.
Yeah, we were just hanging out one day. I was lucky enough to be a work at home freelancer, stay at home dad, and just hanging out with my son all the time and playing. And I had this name Punk Taco rattling around in my head for years, and I was actually 200 pages into another graphic novel that we still haven't brought to life yet because we stopped everything to work on Punk Taco. I told him the name, he thought it was funny, and he just started coming up with ideas for who the character would be and his friends and the villain and all the different adventures he could go on. And I was taking notes, I was recording some of it on the voice memo, and I was like, you know what? As you know, as a father, they're only young for so long.
Yes.
I was like, I could take this idea, I could pitch it around, maybe someone else will publish it, maybe they won't. By that time, he could be 6, 7, 20. Right. It goes by so quick. So I was like, well, this will be one of those projects we self-publish. We'll do it ourselves. I want to capture this moment in time with my son, while he's coming up with these ideas. He's energetic. Now he's already a teenager. Look at him over here. He's kind of like, he's already getting to that age where he's like, I'd rather be shopping right now. But no, it's good. We love working together. And it's just a great experience to be able to share, because I'm going to be working anyways, right?
Right.
So if I'm going to be creating something, it's an awesome feeling to create it with my son and spend that time with him. And not that I'm not trying to push him to be a comic book creator. If he wants to pursue it outside of what we do together, that's on him. But it's just a family fun experiment and see what happens.
So I wanted to ask, again, the co-creator of Punk Taco, what are some of your favorite characters that you came up with your dad?
In the second book, I created the meat werewolves.
Okay.
I originally created them for the first book, but they didn't make it in.
Oh.
Yeah, so we wrote them into the second book.
Very cool. Very cool. Any other characters that didn't make it into the first book that we can expect in Punk Taco 2?
There's this red panda character.
Okay.
That he was originally going to be in Punk Taco 1, but also didn't make it. So now he is kind of a main character in Punk Taco 2.
Very cool.
And you created King Boogar from book 1.
Yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah. What would you say to other kids out there that are creating comic books, with pencil and paper? I know I did that as a kid, and to see yours come to life in such a huge way, would you say keep on doing that thing?
Definitely.
Are there comic books that you're reading other than Punk Taco?
I like reading the Nathan Hale series.
Oh, Nathan Hale, the Hazardous Tales.
Yeah.
One Trick Pony's a good book from him, and I know my son reads a lot of Nathan Hale too. So
we got to meet him at the Charles Schultz Museum. So when we were still living in California a few months ago, they had the Charles Schultz Museum out there, and they were celebrating their 20th anniversary, and Nathan Hale was one of the guests.
Oh.
So we got all of our books signed. We got to meet him. It was really exciting.
Which one's your favorite? Do you like my son's favorite is the the Iron Boats one?
Yeah, I like that one. I also like the Alamo one.
Okay.
And the World War I.
Oh, not Donner Dinner Party?
That was the first one he read. I was like, what are you reading?
Nathan Hale has a great way of bringing kids to the yard
He's fabulous. If you ever get a chance to see one of his presentations, he draws and tells a story at the exact same time. He's amazing. He tells a whole new adventure.
Right.
And he sketches it out while he's telling you the adventure. For anyone out there, I highly recommend Nathan Hale. If you ever get to see him in person, he's a great person.
Do you think you'll ever do that, Adam? Drawing and sketching at the same time?
I don't know if I could do that. I mean, it takes serious skill, and like mental preparation to be able to freestyle that story and draw it at the same time. I could try, but I don't know if I'll be as good as him.
I was going to ask, because I know, Adam, you're into music.
Mm-hmm.
You're in that field. Is it Makana? Are you musical at all?
I am currently trying to learn how to play the trumpet.
That's great. When is there going to be Punk Taco, the album, where you guys can tour as a family band?
Oh, well, I don't know if you know, but we actually have a theme song that I wrote and produced with a friend of mine, and it's on it's on YouTube on our YouTube channel. You should definitely check it out.
Wow!
So we have the official Punk Taco theme song. We were using that to pitch it to studios and stuff like that, and see if anyone.
Tour like the Osmonds,
yeah,
outfits, the whole nine.
I wanted it Pizza Hut and the cassette tape.
That's right.
Come out with your personal pan.
Hey,
no.
Anyone out there listening, you hear it. People want it, we'll give it to you.
Oh, there you go. Well, I will say, and again, for Last Comic Shop fans, and especially our panel pals, our panel pals, we try to get those comic books into the hands of young readers. Punk Taco is a book you gotta check out. Whether you're checking out Volume 1, Punk Taco Volume 2, whether it's the entire collection, whether it's going out to their YouTube channel and checking out this awesome theme song, Adam Walenta and his son, they're bringing it. They're bringing you quality comics that
Thank you.
Everybody from 6 to 60 can enjoy. That's at all ages. Is that something that's important to you?
Very
all
important.
Ages?
Yeah, that was our goal, because a lot of times when people read all ages, they're very much geared towards young readers.
Right.
And we wanted a book that if a child can't read yet and a parent has to read it, the parent's going to enjoy it. And if they don't have kids, they can still enjoy it because they just want a fun, story that makes them smile, makes them feel good. It's not always dark and depressing. Comics don't always have to be like that. And then, as kids grow, they're going to pick up the book and reread it. And we wanted something that could be passed down from generation to generation, not just a loose comic that you put in a box and you never see again.
Right.
So we wanted a book that kids can learn how to read.
Yeah.
Right. So the vocabulary in Punk Taco may be advanced sometimes for some younger readers.
Right.
But they're going to go look up those words, or they're going to ask their parents. It's going to start a conversation. And they're going to learn how to read, reading Punk Taco.
Very, very cool. Well, where can they find all of this wonderful stuff? If they happen not be at a con, we're...
Yeah, punktaco.com is the place to be. You could order Volume 1 and Volume 2 right there. Volume 1 is also on Amazon. You get a little bit cheaper on Amazon, but you don't get it signed. So if you want it signed and personalized, come to our website.
So thank you so much, Adam, Makana. We hope that you stop by the Last Comic Shop again, and thank you for your time today.
Absolutely. Thank you for having us.
That was a bonus interview with Adam Walenta, who does Punk Taco. And so for all of our panel pals out there, if you want a really great book that, again, happened to be written by one of your peers, make sure that you're going out and getting either Volume 1 or Volume 2 of Punk Taco. In any case, we've got more commercial breaks coming up right after this, and then a couple more interviews. So stay tuned.
We interrupt this program to bring you a special report.
We are Cheap Seat Reviews, the podcast that explores the Hollywood film industry for the greater good.
The greater good.
Join us each week as we dive into the depths of streaming movies for the greater good.
The greater good.
You can find us on Twitter at CheapSeatCast, Facebook.com/CheapSeatReviews, and our website is cheapseatreviews.libsyn.com. All for the greater good.
How can this be for the greater good?
The greater good.
Shut it!
All right, we're back with more of the Last Comic Shop, and it is now time for our final two interviews of this particular Hoth Day extravaganza. It's not like Life Day, it's Hoth Day, I guess.
Yeah.
So, yeah, favorite Empire Strikes Back toy, Mikey?
Okay, I know exactly what it is. It is the Imperial Hoth playset, like a Hoth bunker that the Imperials, it's not in the movie or anything like that, but man, that playset is so fun. I miss playsets. Like
playsets are great.
Yeah, man. They were Rebel one that had a turret gun and a probe droid, and then there was an Imperial one that has this collapsing wall and a bridge that falls down and a gun and so cool.
Yeah. Collapsing walls are the best.
Yes.
Secret passages, collapsing walls, floors that drop out.
My favorite all came from the Micros collection. You had the full Hoth base with the ion cannon, and J.A. and I played with those. By the way, where is J.A.? Did he ever come back?
I don't know. I don't know. He's resting comfortably inside the guts of a tauntaun for the night.
Well, you might have to go get him. But before you go, Mikey, what other interviews do you want to hear since you're our guest?
You know what? It would be cool to hear something from Bob McLeod.
Yeah.
You can do that.
New Mutants and he's been involved in so many books. It was incredible to see, like, from the Dale Keown Hulk to just he's had his fingerprints in the comic industry for a long time and done so much great work.
Yeah, here's our interview with Bob McLeod.
Hey, we're back at Baltimore Comic Con talking with the wonderful Bob McLeod. And Bob, I've talked with you in the past, and I've kind of asked you previously how you got into comics in terms of, like, wasn't it like Mad Magazine or something like that?
It was actually Marvel's Crazy Magazine.
Okay.
Their version of Mad Magazine, and it was a satire of the movie Westworld that Marv Wolfman wrote, and he was, I believe, the editor, and he's the one that gave me the job.
Okay.
So I was thrilled. It was my first shot at the big time, and I was, figured I had finally made it after being rejected over and over again. So I was so excited to do it. It's a horrible job. I was not very good, but I had a lot of fun with it.
And I was going to say, too, you have been in the industry and had your hand working on a number of super well-known creators. You're obviously the co-creator of the New Mutants. You've worked on Spider-Man, Star Wars, G.I. Joe, Venom. Been a part of a number of really well-known stories. So I'm curious, well, before we dig into any of those stories, is there any particular type of story you prefer to work on?
Actually, I haven't done much of it. I prefer fantasy.
Okay.
I like backgrounds in the milieu of countryside rather than cities.
Okay.
Just because I think they're more fun to draw, trees and rocks and that kind of stuff.
You're a foliage guy, huh?
Yeah. I think most artists like to draw trees.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Buildings, not so much.
I see the Savage Land there in the X-Men. You got to stretch those muscles a little bit there.
Yeah. Inked John Buscema and Conan a little bit, and that was great fun. I always kind of wanted to do a Western. Never really got much opportunity for that.
Very cool. And you've worked with such a wide variety of artists. You mentioned John Buscema. You have John Byrne in your catalog, Dale Keown, Mike Zeck. Is there any artists in particular that you felt you gelled really well with as a team?
Yeah, I thought Mike Zeck and I always fit together pretty well. I liked his work in his style, and he's told me he liked mine. Mike Golden and I don't think Mike Golden's hard to ink necessarily. He gives you some solid pencils.
Yeah.
Those were some of my favorites. John Buscema, of course. John preferred his own brother to ink his pencils.
Right.
I don't think he was thrilled with anybody else. But,
okay. Well,
so I don't know if he liked my inking or not, but I liked his pencils.
Okay. I was curious if there was a Michael Golden book that you particularly remember, that stands out to you. That you're like, oh, geez, I really loved.
We did Howard the Duck, where Howard returns to Duck World.
Okay.
And that was great fun.
All right. I was going to also ask whether or not, do you prefer penciling to inking, or is it like, do you like going back and forth, or is there, it just depends on the job, or?
Well, I always wanted to ink my own pencils, so I prefer doing pencils and inks.
Yes.
If I'm doing one or the other, if I'm just doing penciling, I get itchy to do inking, and if I'm just doing inking, same thing, I want to do some penciling.
Okay.
So I don't really have a preference for one over the other, but I'd rather do both.
Okay. Well, a lot of folks might know you from your New Mutants work, so we're going to talk a little bit about that. And co-creator of the New Mutants, how was working with Chris Claremont on the New Mutants originally, that the graphic novel? I mean, at the time, that was like the prestige series at Marvel, you know what I mean? Like, they were like, these are the books a little bit outside of continuity, but also like, these are the books we're pushing out to the direct market. It was big at the time. Talk about that experience of coming up with the New Mutant characters. And
who's your favorite? Is it Cannonball, who's invulnerable when he's blasting? Because that's mine.
I prefer Wolfsbane.
Well, they're all my little children, so I love them all. Cannonball, I probably had the most fun with, making him distinctive. Danny Moonstar is fun to draw. Sunspot's a little bit of a chore with all the dots.
Right.
Rain, I always enjoyed drawing Rain. So I like them all. Chris was always very easy to work with, always gave me actually more than I could fit into the comic, so I had to sometimes edit it down a little bit, and he was fine with that. Said he'd rather give me too much than too little.
Right. We were talking with Rick Leonardi on a previous interview. He said the same thing about Chris. Sometimes he would come in with like he had all these ideas and like thousands of pages of backstory that he knew in his head, but he just hadn't put down on paper yet. So I was curious, did you get like full scripts from him, or did you have a little more leeway with the art?
I would call them full plots.
Okay.
So the finished dialogue wasn't there, but he pretty much told you what he was thinking, and you could probably figure out where he was going to put the dialogue and leave enough room for it.
Yeah. Did you get an opportunity to kind of work with him on the cultivating of the personalities of the New Mutants? Like, he didn't just say like, wow, this, Sam's going to be from this place and he's going to be, blasting.
He pretty much had the characters down before they invited me onto the book because they needed someone to visualize them. But we talked back and forth about, like, would Sunspot grow big like the Hulk when he used his powers, or would he stay small? Would they have individual costumes or school uniforms? Various things were still undecided. Was Cannonball, for instance, going to be a big beefy guy, or the way he ended up? So I did some different sketches of that. So he had generally their powers and their names, but we discussed everything as we were developing the book. We didn't even have a title for it at that time.
Oh, wow. The visuals are great. Like, the visuals on Sunspot, like, to this day, he's still one of my favorites to see pop up in any books. And Cannonball with the trail all the time.
Yeah.
I'm a big Cannonball fan. But speaking of being a fan, I am just geeking out. You've worked on so many properties that are important to me as a fan, whether it's G.I. Joe, Hulk, Spider-Man. Do you ever geek out about this stuff? Did you geek out whenever your New Mutants characters were showing up on screen? Or, with Kraven being the next big thing? Or
if the New Mutants had been different, I would have.
Okay. It's your creations.
It's my creation, so I was excited that they were doing a movie at all, because we used to laugh about it, that they'd ever make a movie of the New Mutants.
Right.
Because they've got so many other heroes that you would think they'd make movies of first. So we never expected a movie, and it was great that they made one. I just wish everything about it had been different. And then, I kind of geeked out when I was offered the job to draw Superman, because that's the comic that I read as a kid. So it was like an honor to draw Superman in the comics.
And you were on at a pivotal time. That was when the show was going on. You had all the attention with Superman, showing his identity to Lois Lane and all the build up to the wedding. What was that like, being in that culture? And
it was wonderful, because I thought Mike Carlin was a great editor, and we would get in a room together and talk about what we were going to do with Superman for the next few months. It was a very professionally handled series in that respect, I thought, compared to a lot of other jobs, editors that I'd worked with. Mike understood artwork and could make constructive suggestions that I appreciated.
Right.
As opposed to some artists or don't really know if anything's good or bad, so they can't really...
They just want to make the trains run on time.
Exactly, yeah. So it was a good experience.
My final question for you is just, your work, you've worked with so many wonderful artists. Have you ever put the pen down, even on your own art, and just surprised yourself with how wonderful things have turned out?
Sometimes I've been particularly happy, when you're... I would not trace pencils, so I would try to be spontaneous in the inks. And sometimes something would happen that, that turned out pretty nice, not knowing ahead of time exactly how it was going to turn out.
Right.
So yeah, those things happen, and it's always wonderful. I was able to learn on the job. So my early stuff is pretty crude, but once I got to a certain level, I was able to control nothing bad happening. But the early stuff, I just didn't know enough.
It's a creative process. That's how you learn. So.
Yeah.
No, but your stuff is great. It's fantastic.
Yeah, and speaking of that, just real quickly, one or two folks that influenced you when you were, again, you mentioned that you got to come up through the ranks, as it were. Who were your mentors when you first started out, would you say?
Well, I didn't really have any mentors, but I studied, of course, Mort Drucker from Mad Magazine was my big influence when I was younger. And then when I was trying to learn how to do superheroes, I studied John Buscema's penciling and Neil Adams more for Neil's inking. Those were probably my top 3 influences.
Okay. All right. I was curious because eventually then you got to work with John Buscema, which would have been, is that another moment you were kind of like, oh, yes, this is kind of nice? Like,
well, my very first time inking John Buscema was on Kazar number 7.
Okay.
It was a rush job that there were no inkers available to ink that job, and the production manager, John Verporten, was, trying to figure out who he was going to get to ink this. And I was there in the office and I said, please give me that job. I would love to ink that. But again, that was early in my career. I didn't know how to ink. So
sometimes the best ability is availability.
Yeah.
Right.
So it was a rush job, and at that same time, my parents happened to decide to visit New York. And so I had to entertain my parents and try to get this job done in like 5 days. And
I'm filling these blacks.
Yeah. If only, yeah. So I actually got a lot of help. Joe Rubenstein tightened up some of the pencils for me because it was breakdowns.
Right.
Klaus Janson, I think, inked a couple pages. Neil inked ahead here and there. So I had a studio up at Neil's Continuity Studios at the time.
Okay.
So I got a lot of help on that job.
Oh,
well, to only be in that room with all those great creators up there.
It was a lot of fun, yeah.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Bob, for taking some time to talk with not only us, but all of the Last Comic Shop listeners. Again, if you haven't had an opportunity to check out Bob's wonderful work, it is gorgeous. Whether it's New Mutants, whether it's Kraven's Last Hunt, some books that I know that folks that maybe aren't into comic books, but just getting into those are very accessible books that Bob worked on. And we thank you so much for those great books.
Thank you. Thanks.
I was going to say, don't forget about Superhero ABC, the new stuff from Bob McLeod. Do you want to talk about that real quick before we go?
Yeah, that was something I had always wanted to do, a children's book. And when my work slowed down at Marvel and DC, I was looking around for projects to do. My wife actually came up with the idea. She said, why don't you do a superhero alphabet book? And I said, wow, what a great idea. Why didn't I think of that? So it was a fun project. I just made up all my own heroes for each letter of the alphabet and used a lot of alliteration. Kind of went in the back door, knew some people, and got it published by a good publisher, HarperCollins.
Oh, that's wonderful.
And it got a couple starred reviews. So it's done very well and still in print after all these years.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for that. Thank you so much for your time. We really appreciate it. Thanks, Bob McLeod.
Thank you.
All right, we're back here at the Last Comic Shop with Dirk Manning. And he's been nice enough to talk with us here at Baltimore Comic Con. Dirk, how's the show been for you?
Wonderful, man. It is really good to be getting back to shows in person. It's good to see you guys again, too, man. It's been a minute.
Well,
so
it has been.
This is nice. It's like a homecoming.
Right, exactly. I know we've run into you at Pittsburgh shows.
Yep.
I know I've run into you at New York shows. So
Yep.
It is just nice to be back out at cons. And I just got to pick your brain a little bit.
Sure, buddy.
What have you been up to during the pandemic? Like, how did you,
in
terms of comic books, like, was it a fruitful time for you, in terms of creativity? Did you get a lot of work done?
I honestly, I did. During the pandemic, I think it was a chance for a lot of us to reset a lot of things, Like, it was a situation where I think initially a lot of us thought about, well, this is going to be a couple weeks, we'll get back on the road. And then when it became much longer than that, it was good to unplug. Before the pandemic, I was doing like 30 shows a year.
Right.
That's a lot. And I'm not saying I'm still not going to be doing more shows moving forward, but you don't realize how hard you're grinding sometimes until you get to step away from it.
Yeah.
So I was able to double down a little bit, kind of recenter, refocus. We did Butts and Seats, the Tony Schiavone story with Tony Schiavone from AEW. That became a $135,000 Kickstarter, #1 bestseller on Amazon, the first original graphic novel advertised on cable television.
Wow.
By the time this goes on air, we'll have finished what hopefully will be a very successful graphic novel with Arn Anderson from All Elite Wrestling.
Very cool.
Yeah, the founder of the Four Horsemen. Yes. So, like I said, hopefully now in the future, talking about this, we'll have had another very successful campaign with that.
Do you think that that might open up the door for, a volume collection of the rest of the Horsemen?
I really just try to go day by day.
Okay.
It's an interesting path because primarily I'm a horror guy, right?
Right.
When you look at like Tales of Mystery and Nightmare World and Twisted Haunted Highons, I tend to live in the horror realm, but I've also always been a huge wrestling fan.
Yes.
So doing the Tony Schiavone book during the pandemic was amazing for me, and now working with Arn Anderson has been an incredible experience. It's just so cool. And so people ask, well, are you going to like start doing more and more wrestling stuff? And it's like, well, we'll see.
Well, it's a good question, though, because ultimately there's a lot of crossover between comic books and wrestling.
A lot.
A lot of the folks that read comic books love professional wrestling as well. Same kind of storylines.
Right.
And
good guys and bad guys. And everything
some of
else.
those legends have just wonderful stories.
Yeah.
And so just fascinating life stories. So, like, I think that's an untapped market. So
yeah, and it's cool because there's something in the Arn Anderson graphic novel. It's called Arn Anderson, My Life as the Enforcer. There's something in the graphic novel that he has, to our knowledge, never publicly spoken about in regards to his wrestling career as a performer.
Wow.
And like my Mike Dawkins, the gimmick attorney, a lot of times would do some of the calls with us, and he's like, I've never heard this. And we were like Googling it. There is no reference of this thing anywhere.
Jeez.
And I told Arn, I'm like, whatever you do not talk about this again. keep it exclusive for the comics.
Right, yeah, this is going to be a massive bombshell. You're going to need to pick up this book.
Yeah, it's really cool. So that's been fun. Now we got the Tales of Mystery Act 1 Omnibus coming out through Source Point Press. This year is going to be a lot of new content from me. I'm really excited.
I was going to say, too, we're here. You have your collected editions of Haunted Highlands. The last time we talked to you, we were just getting started.
Yeah, that's right.
Talk to us a little bit about, how successful that book has become. How's it like working with Twisted, and what's that process
It's
like?
fun, man. It's interesting because as we're sitting here now talking at Baltimore, this is the third year in a row I've been nominated for a Ringo Award. So in 2020, Haunted Highlands Volume 1, The Darkness Rises, was nominated for Best Humor Comic, Best Illustrator, Best Colorist. 2021, another book I did during the pandemic, Buried But Not Dead, was nominated for Best Original Graphic Novel. Now, this year, as I stand here today, and for the record, as people know, this is Saturday, the Ringo Awards are tonight. Haunted Highlands Volume 2 is nominated again for Best Humor Comic. So it's weird that a horror guy keeps getting nominated for, like, humor. But, the Venn diagram is there. But I love working with Twisted. The evolution of their brand. Been around. They've been doing stuff for 20 years as well, right? This March will be my 20th anniversary as a published comic book writer.
Congrats.
Thank you. And to see Twisted continue to evolve their brand and do this really amazing comic with me, and to see them like working with Ice Nine Kills, and they run their own comic convention and all the stuff they're doing. It's a really fun relationship. I really value my relationship, my personal and professional friendship with those guys. It's just fun. Mariana Pescosta, Alessandro De Fornassari, one of the best art teams in comics. It's just a blast to do like this adult Scooby-Doo style book.
Exactly. You were talking about Venn diagrams earlier, and this sure has a whole bunch of different circles, intersecting at the same time.
Yeah. So it's wild, man. It's fun. And like I said, someone once told me the book is like adult Scooby-Doo. Like I said, I've never been able to get away from that in my brain now. I'm like, wow, I wish you were here a year and a half ago. I could have pitched it that way from the beginning. But they're fake ghost hunters who get called a real haunted house. And what's fun working with Twisted is, obviously, we never want to disrespect their brand because I have a lot of respect for them. But they also do not take their comic book characters so seriously that we can't have fun.
Yeah, they're allowed to be a little bit silly in there.
They're allowed to be
goofy.
Yeah, they're allowed to be goofy. They're allowed to be silly. And we can laugh with them and not at them.
Right.
And it's so much fun. I appreciate the flexibility they give me. We're doing some stuff to continue to build out the Haunted Highlands brand. It's just fun. I like to mainly focus on a lot of books that I own that I write. So like I said, working with Tony Schiavone, working with Arn Anderson. It's fun to dip my toe in the pond on that with the right partners.
Right.
And Twisted are the right partners on that. They're a lot of fun to work with. We have a really good working relationship, and it's a blast.
And it's just one of our mission statements for our podcast have always been to get people into comic books.
Mm-hmm.
And it's work like yours going out and getting those wrestling fans and bringing them in. You get the first Tony Schiavone graphic novel in their hand, then the Arn Anderson, and then before you know it, they're picking up Haunted Highlands. They're picking up The Damnation of Charlie Wormwood from Source Point Press.
Yeah. Dr. Christy Blanch's book, right. And that's the thing, too. It's like we need to create entry points to new fans, people that are fans of Twisted that came to buy the book. And then conversely, what happens is people that are aware of my work, they're like, well, I don't necessarily know about Twisted, but I know your work, Dirk. I'm going to check this out. And people have read it, and they've loved it, and they've gotten into it. So it's really a very nice symbiotic relationship with this book.
Yeah, you know, we say it all the time, and Dirk he's speaking our philosophy. There is a comic book for everyone.
Bingo.
As long as you are willing to look and listen to great shows like ours and read stuff by Dirk, there's stuff for you. So if you think that, it's just capes and stuff. No. There's plenty of stuff out there. Yeah. Wrestling, horror, comedy, Scooby-Doo. All kinds of wonderful.
And sometimes with Dirk's books all at once.
Right, yeah. Well, and it's funny because, like, now this past year with Source Point Press, we put out the new special edition of Hope Volume 1, which was like a superhero drama book that I did, you know.
We talked to you with that one as well. I love that book. That was so much fun.
Thank you. But people were like, wait a minute, Dirk, man, you're a horror guy. You're doing a superhero comic? And I said, no, I'm doing a comic. And I think we talked about this back in the day. I'm doing a comic about a superhero.
Who's a mom.
Who's a mom, right. And now we have the Adventures of Cthulhu Jr. and Friends coming out, which is an all-ages horror book. Not just a kid's book. Scoop McMahon has a art style that's very accessible to kids. But you and I, all of us as adults, will read The Adventures of Cthulhu Jr. We will get a very different vibe off of that book than a kid reading it. A kid's going to identify with Penny and her friend Cthulhu Jr., this little monster. We as adults are going to identify with, like, a lot of more of the I don't say the adult themes, like mature reader, but about this guy who's trying to fulfill his professional ambitions and what he's willing to do to get it. Entry points. Entry points are crucial.
It's the notion of writing those all ages books that actually are true all ages. That again,
yes,
you hit different things depending on what your readership is. That's the type of comic books that I know that Dirk, you grew up with, that we grew up with. That's what got folks interested, you know. And then after you get past that threshold, there's plenty more stuff to check out.
That's exactly it. You know, when someone comes up to my table at a show, they will see that this is a guy that predominantly writes horror. But they're also going to see Hope. They're also going to see Cthulhu Jr. They're also going to see a wrestling book. And they can look around. And my goal is, when you walk to my table, there will be a book that if you're willing to take a chance, whether you've heard about me, whether you know nothing about me, whether you're looking for something new, that you can pick up and enjoy. Tales of Mystery. We just put out the omnibus from Source Point Press, which collects the first 4 volumes. It's a $60 book. Maybe you don't want to go that deep. Pick up volume 5 of Tales of Mystery. That's a $20-ish book, right? And people say, oh, but it's volume 5. You can pick it up and start there. And that is one of my biggest tenets in anything I write. It doesn't matter if it's volume 5. If you like it, you can then go backwards. I didn't start reading comics until I was a teenager. I grew up reading prose novels and stuff like that. And and to me, it's very important that if I go pick up any book in a series, I should be able to figure out what's going on pretty quick and enjoy it.
Right.
You know, and then you can go backwards and go forwards. Now, again, I like to start with number 1. I'm kind of like that guy. You know, that's absolutely true. And that's one of the reasons I like working with the Source Point Press so much. Almost every book Source Point Press puts out, at any point, you can pick up and read it. You can pick up any Garrett Gunn book and read it and enjoy it and get a complete read. You can pick up Damnation of Charlie Wormwood, pick it up, get a complete read. Anything we do, you can just pick it up and go. There's not 5,000 years of backstory and all this stuff. And again, I'm not dismissing that. Legacy characters are important. I'm on volume 5 of Tales of Mystery. There is a legacy to that book. But you can also still pick up volume 5 and read it and enjoy it and then go backwards.
Right. That's the way it always was. None of us started with issue 1 of X-Men.
Right.
Picked it up somewhere in the 200s, 300s.
Right.
And went from there.
One of the first X-Men comics I read, I think it was X-Men 281.
With Bishop. Or no, that's right before Bishop.
No, that wasn't that one. I'm sorry. Which one? It was the one with the death of Colossus.
Oh, yeah.
Not 281. 281 was, I can't remember the number now. But I looked at it and I'm like, the cover just struck me.
Yeah.
And I picked it up and I'm like, wow, this is incredible. You know,
right. I can't remember the number either. That Legacy Virus.
The Legacy Virus one.
Through the mutant books.
Yes, exactly. But just something about it at that moment, I'm like, I have a lot of friends that read this. I'm not normally a superhero guy, but I want to check this out. And it wrecked me. And I went backwards a little bit, and then I went forward and read some of it for a while.
That's it about great stories. Great stories will inspire you as you're reading them. Will inspire you to go back and find that extra stuff. Go back to find those next volumes. Go back to buy those omnibuses.
Yes,
buy
exactly.
Those $60 collections.
Yeah, right.
Have something nice for the bookshelf.
Those bookshelf editions are nice. I don't do as much an issue format as I do as some other creators. I'm trying to work on that a little bit more this year. But again, I grew up reading novels. And it's like, to me, pick it up, get it out, binge read it. Enjoy it. here's the next one.
There you go. And before we let you go, just since
Yes,
we're
sir.
here at the Source Point Press Studios or Source Point Studios booth,
Yeah.
I've noticed their rise along with yours.
Oh, wow.
It's
Isn't
very
it incredible?
symbiotic.
Yeah.
Do you have anything you can tell us about Source Point and where they're moving here in the future to continue to grow and get better? Because it's one of those great companies that gives folks different stories outside of just capes. You have a lot of horror books. You have, just you run the gamut. So
Yeah, I'll tell you what. With Josh Werner, who helped found Source Point Press back in the day, moving into our editor-in-chief position, we've really kind of recalibrated a little bit. We're really focusing on, like, what do we love? We love horror books. We love things that are accessible. A lot of the Garrett Gunn books right now are blown up. We got a multi-film deal with some of Garrett's books, well, some other ones. We just did a Tales of Mystery video game on the Kickstarter that we did, which was free. It was free for everyone who backed the campaign. They got a free downloadable Tales of Mystery game.
Very cool.
Yeah. We're the first. I was the first Kickstarter to ever offer a free video game based on our comic book. People are like, wait, you get
another crossover.
Yeah, like you get a free video game, and I'm like, yeah, because why not? Just stay tuned, man. If you're not following Source Point Press on socials, we're moving up. Just pay attention.
Well, what do you got coming out in 2023?
Yeah, at this point, books come out in 2023. Hope Volume 2.
Okay.
People have been champing at the bit for that. I'm really excited about Hope Volume 2. We're looking at Tales of Mystery Volume 5. We are looking at a werewolf western called Homestead. Haunted High Ends Volume 2. A re-release of Right or Wrong, A Writer's Guide to Creating Comics. And the classic horror thing, which will be announced by the time this goes live, that I'm embargoed to talk about till Monday, real time.
That's all right.
But yeah, just follow me at Dirk Manning across social media. Look for the guy at the top hat and the scarf, and that's what you'll see.
You'll see the tag right here in the post for the show, so make sure that you're checking out Dirk Manning. And thank you so much, Dirk, for taking some time on the Last Comic Shop, sharing your thoughts. I mean, we're kindred spirits when it comes to the way you should be doing comic books, so we appreciate your time, sir.
And seriously, guys, I appreciate what you're doing, spreading the love on this, so thank you for what you're doing. You're doing a wonderful service, and thanks for having me on. I appreciate you both.
Thanks. You're getting a line, man. So get back to work.
Yeah.
Good luck, sir.
Thank you, gentlemen.
All right, and that was our conversation with the always delightful Dirk Manning, which post-interview I actually tracked down at Baltimore, his Tony Schiavone book. It was lots of fun. Lots of great behind-the-scenes stories. If you're a pro wrestling fan, I definitely recommend it. I also didn't know that he was a Starbucks barista. Baristo? But I don't know. But,
I think it's barrister. Isn't it barrister?
Yes. Like he's like a lawyer in England?
Right. That's right. They get paid the same.
Does he have to wear the white powdered wig?
It's a frappe. The sad fact is I worked for a time behind the counter at one of those places. Never found that out. So I learned something new.
What's the temperature inside a Tauntaun? It's lukewarm.
I wonder if JA's figured that out by now.
I wonder if we're going to have a JA next week.
I don't know. He's starting to see visions of Obi-Wan Kenobi out there on the tundra. So, any case, yeah, I think we should go find him. I hope you enjoyed all these great interviews from Baltimore Comic Con. We sure did enjoy talking to all those folks. So thank you so much to Baltimore Comic Con for allowing us to come as press and talk to all those folks. And thank you to all the folks that took some time out of their busy show to talk to the Last Comic Shop and give you those great stories. But if you want more of these great interviews in future, make sure that you rate, review, and subscribe out to www.lastcomicshoppodcast.com. It's a terrific place where you can find all those awesome episodes, including past episodes that we've cut not only at Baltimore Comic Con, but at Three Rivers Con here in Pittsburgh. We also had interviews, with Kelly Thompson that just happened recently. So yeah, go out to the website, make sure that you're downloading all of those great things. If you like us talking with creators. And also make sure that if you need to protect any of your comic books, you're going out to bcwsupplies.com. It's a terrific place where you can get bags and boards and short boxes and long boxes and clamshells. Yeah, clamshells. Like you can put the comic books up on the wall. I love that stuff.
Make them nice.
Yes. And if you want to really make them nice, make sure that you're using promo code LCSPOD to get 10% off your order. Yeah, it's the post-Christmas season. You're trying to save a little bit of money, right? Get that 10% off and also support the Last Comic Shop. That is promo code LCSPOD out at bcwsupplies.com.
And speaking of the LCS POD, you can find us on the socials just about everywhere at Last Comic Shop. Or you can go back to the home base at www.lastcomicshoppodcast.com, where they can find what else, we don't have a JA. Mikey, what do we do with the JA?
See, the whole show falls apart if he's not here.
You know how to do the merch thing, Mikey. Just say merch.
Yeah. Go onto the website and order some fancy merch. They have T-shirts. They have, I believe, some kind of bag of some sort. Maybe a coffee mug. That would be good.
Mikey, JA never tells us the real stuff.
This
isn't like the way JA does it. We need to go out and find JA.
All right, we got to end the show. I'm the host with the most, Andy Larson. I was joined by Chad Smith, Mikey Wood, and J.A. Scott wherever he is. We're going to find him. Until next week, stay safe, stay warm, and remember that if you have the opportunity to talk to great comic book creators, do it. Because they're nice folks. We sure found that out.
Yeah.
Crickets, J.A.
Crickets.
The Last Comic Shop was a 2023 Black Angus production.